So the percentage split of revenue at a $50 million private loan portfolio, the numbers might surprise you. We're going to break it all down right now.
Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your host from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey, everyone, real quick here before we get started. We're going to do one consulting day in August. We don't do these very often. You know, it's a full day, heavy lifting. But we are calendaring one for August. To learn more, go to hardmoneymastermind.com, click on live events, talk to Dave. He'll give you all the details. All right. So talking about some revenue and expenses. We've been at this size portfolio hovering right around $50 million outstanding for a while, for a handful of years now. So after you get to scale in a certain market like ours, 7 states in the mid-Atlantic, we're still growing into some of the newer ones. It's hard to get past that without like adding staff and originators and different, types of lending. So anyway, point being that we've been around this portfolio size for a while, but bottom line's been increasing. Even with like a similar loan production year to year, just by knowing how to not really charge more, but what the opportunities are to bring in more revenue from the existing business. And so we're going to talk about that. I think some of the percentages are going to surprise you. And we're also going to talk about some of the expenses. Like what does it take? What does it cost to run a company of this size?
Yeah, I used Claude recently to analyze some data that we had, some numbers and some percentages, um, because different things are kind of in different books and things like that. So we, felt like there would be, and a lot of this stuff has been to us kind of pretty predictable over the years. We've been doing this a long time. A lot of this is pretty predictable. If you've ever owned or run an income and expense business compared to like an asset and liability business, some of these things you can kind of do in your head for the most part, not exact numbers, obviously, but you can kind of game plan based on your production numbers and things like that, unless there's anything kind of crazy. But we're going to go over some income percentages, some expense percentages, and then what NOI expenses are percentage-wise profitability compared to total income, and also some line items on this that I think are going to be interesting. So,
Yeah, let me jump in on number one. I want to start with the big ones, and we'll go through some others.
okay,
I'm excited, so I want to jump in. I want to talk about the revenue.
dig in.
All right. So coming in at number one line item, number one income type
This is surprising. I think this is surprising for more people.
at 42.6% is servicing fee, not origination, which is probably what people would expect. Servicing fee, which means a couple things in the way we account for this. It is the spread between the note rate and what we pay our investors. So in normal everyday performing loans, we're lending out at 12.99 and we are paying investors 10. So it's just over a 20% spread. In default, it's more like a 30% spread. If that goes to 24% default rate and we're paying them 17, and those numbers fluctuate a little bit, but that's more or less what it is. And so we have a 7-point spread, which is a little under 30%. In our setup, this also includes late fees that we're charging on the missed monthly, or not missed, but late monthly payments. That rolls into servicing fee and the way we categorize them too. In hindsight, it kind of would be nice to have those broken out into two different ones, but that's the way we started many years ago, and we just continued with what we have. So 42.6% is servicing fee. I think that's probably surprising to some people.
Yeah. So one thing to note, depending on how your capital is structured, if you're doing co-lending, a fund or whatever, in essence, if it's our own capital, if it's co-lender's capital, we in essence have everything kind of set up as like 10% margin. So when we say so none of these numbers have to do with our own capital or business capital in these deals as well, percentage wise, right? Because if like interest income, let's call it, like none of this is interest income because that gets picked up elsewhere, and that's what our co-lenders, aka capital investors, or ourselves are getting. So like, for instance, if Chris and I have money or one of our business have money into deals, this is just the active operation, right? It has nothing to do with the actual deployment.
Yeah, interest
It's
income
actual.
isn't calculated here, but also something to mention is that since we don't charge ourselves and our business partners any servicing fee, everybody gets the full note rate. This number is still at 42, over 42%.
Yeah. Yeah, true. It's good. Okay. So I think everybody can guess the second biggest line item, and that's, origination fees. That comes in just shy of 30%, 29.4% is origination fees. Um, so obviously that's good. And then the next one, which I don't think is surprising, but I think a lot of members of our mastermind group might think this is surprising. 14.2% is loan extension fees. 14.2%. That's a lot,
It's a
right?
lot.
I think most people aren't. I don't know. We think that's a big income, a big income stream. So 14.2%.
Yeah, and then backing up real quick to loan origination fee, I think that most people would assume that, just the way you describe lending, like if you're making 3 points and you can turn that money twice a year, then you would probably call that on, a given $1 million, 6 points because it goes out twice a year. Yet you're only getting that 3-point spread annually. You know what I mean? So like a lot of people, and probably in newer operations where you're just building your book and you're rolling through fix and flip loans, I would expect origination fee to be the biggest number here. And if we went back for some years, it probably was many years ago, our biggest line item too. But once you have that, like, look, you know, once you get to scale, you have more outstanding. Like, we'll have $50 million outstanding at any given time, but we don't close $50 million in a year because not everything pays off in 12 months, especially the commercial stuff. But that's also where the extension fees come in. If everything paid off in 6 months and then another 6 months and you're getting all these funds and origination fee, cool, great. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But when things extend, like you can think of the extension fees kind of as very related to origination fee. It's like an origination fee that you get again if they don't pay off in a year or whatever your term may be, 6 or 9 months. So just, you know, I think it's a number of people in the mastermind and inner circle, the origination fee is in all likelihood the biggest line item there. And they're turning fix and flip loans more quickly. But as your business matures, like these things kind of change.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree with that. As you reach scale, it slides in kind of, the opposite direction just because there's, the servicing fee over time, with defaults and, um, lag deals. Like, for instance, let's say you don't get paid on a deal for 6 months and then it kicks in, there's a big servicing fee that comes in, right? So it ends
Right.
up being it just ends up being higher. And again, the lending companies who again have reached scale and maturity eventually will see that. So okay, so that's 86% of of income comes from those three line items. Obviously, there's additional things with, appraisal fees and commitment fees and inspection fees and um whatever. If you have uh you know whatever. There's a lot of other additional smaller line items on that, but that's the majority. Let's dig in a little bit to expenses. If you're watching this video, if you're listening to this video, if you're listening to this, like, what do you think the highest expense percentage would be? And I mean, without even looking at these numbers, I already know what obviously the two big ones are. So let's go through the two big ones first, and then we'll kind of dive into some other stuff. So a big one obviously is going to be with scale and you grow payroll or commissions, right? So we have payroll and commissions together, and it ends up being, let's see, so 19, about 27, about 25, 27% between payroll and commissions for salespeople. You might, if you're a one man operation or you and a business partner and you have, 10, 15, 20 million, you might not have any on that side. But as you grow, the static payroll, right, your W-2 employees will stay the same, right? So typically, if you have a $50 million portfolio, $60 million portfolio, $70 million portfolio, usually at that phase, that's not going to change. Usually when you're hiring, people get somebody early on, and then maybe not the next person until maybe 15 or million, or until 20, or maybe someone else at like 25 million. But then after you get to that, you have a lot of bandwidth and a lot of growth for static employees, right? Like um, a loan servicer or an accountant or a loan processor, things like that. But as you continue to grow and scale and get bigger, and you need commission employees, loan officers, salespeople, things like that, they're just going to grant a higher dollar figure. You're probably going to give up 30% for sales commission, 20, 25, 30% on the sales commission. So anyways, on our end, between payroll and commission employees, we're looking at about 27%, which is by far the biggest expense item.
Yeah, and then the next one, let's go to the next one. If anybody knows anything about HMB, they could probably guess if you've been following this podcast or if you're in the mastermind group, is that our next biggest one is marketing, coming in at 14.7%. And let me say this. We were talking about these numbers before we started recording, is that even with the spend that we have well into six figures, we think it's low. We think it's low compared to our own revenue. Like, I think that a lending company should definitely be spending 10% of their top line revenue on marketing in order to grow and feed the machine and bring in new clients, all the stuff that we want. We're a little bit below that. We're like 8 or 9% of revenue. Granted, it's 14% of the total expenses. And so it's still, definitely well into six-figure spend on ads and on different kind of,
Looks like it's 7%.
7% of the total revenue. Yeah, which is a little bit low. And there's probably, we're probably spending some stuff in marketing that we don't know for sure if it is, we don't know the exact ROI because, we're halfway through 2026 right now. And say one paid marketing channel has brought in 100 leads, nothing's closed yet. We're probably, as long as those are real estate investors in our geographic market, we're probably going to keep that on because we know that over time it's going to back out. It's hard to back it out in a given month, even a given year, right? But you never know. Like one of these could hit and it's a 20K fee and all right, it pays for the whole past 12 months. So point being, I started with the fact that there are probably some lower performing paid marketing channels that we could trim out. And, maybe we do, maybe we don't. It's something we go back and forth on all the time. And not to mention that they change. Like Google Ads used to be a no-brainer based on what it cost per loan app and when we would close one and how much it paid. It used to be a no-brainer. Then it became like all right, we're getting lower quality, but the numbers are good. And then we revamped it and it became, all right, now the quality is really good, but it's super expensive. Are we backing this out? And so these things fluctuate. They fluctuate for sure. But long story short, without getting too long-winded on the marketing stuff, I would aim for 10% of your top line gross revenue as marketing spend.
Yeah. So there's a lot of other little ones. I'm going to go in a second, the two next size ones, but because there's obviously a lot of little ones, rent or lease, only 3.5%, which is pretty low, because depending on the business, a lot of businesses, storefront businesses, retail businesses, other, uh, you know, people that are contingent on their office and things like that, those are high numbers. Like those are could be extremely high. We're at like 3% on that.
They could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really the next two, and then everything else is very small. And as you grow, I think you're going to potentially run into some of this is insurance and then software and technology. Both of those are high numbers, right? Like 7%, they're about 7% each. And, insurance is typically two different things. Number one, we have a commercial liability, policy that's pretty pricey every year that, we kind of have to have in place in case of emergencies. And then also, we're fronting insurance for for like forced place policies. Although that number probably,
Yeah,
you know, Yeah, there's an income line on it as well.
There's
So
income.
it's actually not nearly as high as it seems, come to think about it.
Yeah, there's an income balance on the forced place line because we are charging the premiums that we get charged with interest to anybody where we have to put a
Yeah.
forced place line plus a small fee to put it in place. So we get that money back probably plus some. But no, for stuff like our basic office insurance and our E&O policy, that's just a straight cost. Like well
Yeah,
into
you're
five
right.
figures, like we're not getting that back.
Yeah, you're right. So with all that stuff, with that taken into consideration, that number is only like 2.5%. So it's actually lower. And then software and technology is pretty high. I mean, we're also pretty, let's just say loose and proactive with growth tools between servicing softwares and AI softwares and website tools and technologies and, MLSs and commercial valuation tools. So it's a big
Whole
nut.
tech stack. Our
Yeah,
whole tech stack is hitting like
it's
low six figures.
it's a big number. It's a big number, but like that's how we operate. We use a lot of resources and tech to underwrite, to run the business and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that's the expense side of it. We talked about the income side. Our income to expense, our expense to income is about 55%, which I think is a pretty decent number, right? 45% profitability. Yeah, no, 55% profitability, sorry. Um, decent profit margins, all in all. And from experience, that percentage does decrease with growth. And I was sharing this with some members of the mastermind group. The reason that that percentage really goes down as you grow and scale is exactly what Chris started the conversation off with, is you need resources and help and expanding geographically or expanding with loan officers or partners to help you do that. And if you're going to hire, good killer loan officers and good killer kind of people to help you grow the business, like it's going to cost money and you might be giving up 30%, right? If I'm the originator or Chris is the originator of the deal, there's no commission on the deal, right? We make $10,000 on a deal. We put that in our pocket. If we have a sales guy or commission employee, they might get 20, 25, 30% plus on that deal, right? So that's $3,000 on every deal. And then you do that at scale. So those percentages do add up. So again, I don't think that should scare you. I mean, if you had static expenses that were super, super high, that should scare you. But if it's going to help grow and scale and commission employees, so be it. It could be a deal that you wouldn't have had anyways.
All right, everyone, that is the pod for today. Hope you learned some things about the finances of a $50 million portfolio. If you're interested in working with us for one full day, learning the whole blueprint, check out hardmoneymastermind.com, click on live events, schedule time to talk to Dave. We hope to work with you in person or virtually, and we'll see you next time on the pod.
Thank you for joining us on this Private Lenders Podcast episode. Please note that opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, financial, and accounting professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we would appreciate it if you could spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 community for all private and hard money lenders.